One of the things Canadians always loved to brag about was how we always top the charts for best, happiest countries to live in. Well, it turns out that might not be the case any longer. Marty up north. Welcome back. Welcome back to the show, my man.
Happy Wednesday, Clyde.
Yeah, well, it's Thursday for everybody else watching this. So.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Wednesday evening.
They know what we're up to.
They know how this works. They know how we broke the fourth wall. It's over. So Canada in their happiness ranking. I mean, we're happy guys. We like a lot of things, but a lot of the things that we like are no longer available here in Canada and are becoming less and less available, like our freedom of choice, freedom of speech, freedom of all kinds of things, freedom of movement. A lot of the things.
Cheap booze.
Cheap booze. Yeah, no, it's no longer.
Cheap gasoline. I mean, God, who doesn't like filling their dirt bike with cheap gasoline? Remember those days? Like, cost of whatever. I remember gasoline, like 45 cents. God, you could go all day long on your dirt bike. Nowadays, what is it? $1.99? Yeah. Actually, we often say they're taking away fun, right? The governments are purposely trying to take away fun.
The fun police.
Yeah. No, you saw that article. I posted that article. That's well, let's talk about it. Bring it up if you got a quick.
Oh, I've got it right here. Yeah.
Yeah. So just some context. That's just It's actually a pretty detailed website. It comes from a detailed website. Maybe there's a link related to other tweets or the follow-up tweets.
Oh, maybe the follow-up.
This is a guy who actually, this gentleman actually started research like a decade ago, researching. Came up with a way to measure happiness. He's got like this 1 out of 10 happiness index, and not just Canada, like countries across the world. And then on their actual website, you can see, that's just a summary there. He's got the happiness. We're ranked 15th overall, but then he breaks it down as where we rank in terms of, the 60 and overs and the 30 and overs. And the thing I found very interesting, which was the topic of my tweet, is that young Canadians 30 and under are extremely unhappy. They're 58th in the world when you look at just young Canadians. And that's
well, what do they have to be happy about? I mean, honestly,
exactly.
Like all honesty, I mean, previous generations have had it pretty good here in this country, but the young generations, I mean, even including mine, I'm in the millennial generation. People in my generation, they can't afford a home if they hadn't gotten into it like in their early 20s. And who's buying a home in their early 20s? Well, now that's the only way you're getting a home is if you have a lot to put in your early 20s. Well, you can't even get a down payment these days. It's just ridiculous.
Think of a poor Canadian who's 30 years old or under. He's had Trudeau as his prime minister for 8 or 9 years. Can you imagine? Like if you're 20 years old, you've had Trudeau as your prime minister for half your life. Plus, and a quarter of your life was under COVID. Like young Canadians, yeah, of course, young Canadians are frustrated. But in the study, what's interesting when you dive into the study is the man who does the research does a strong uncover some interesting trends. Eastern Bloc countries, the young people in Eastern Bloc countries are absolutely happy. They're the happiest. The people in Georgia, Latvia, the Czech Republic, places like that. And he identifies that they're the former Soviet unions where communism failed and life was miserable. And now they're experiencing a boom and they're completely happy. And on the flip side, Americans, Canadians, Australians are becoming unhappier. Because we went from, like you said, lots of freedoms and lots of things that I guess maybe we took for granted and people took them away, and now we're unhappy. Yeah, it's just a sad reflection. But actually, I wanted to say I wanted to follow up on something. Yeah, I got in a bit of a Twitter storm today because I mentioned, like you did, that young Canadians are unhappy, and I referenced the fact that older Canadians had it good, and that upset a lot of older Canadians. And
they don't like to be told how great they had it, of course.
Yeah.
No, pull get your bootstraps and pull yourself to your feet. Yeah, that's what we keep heering. Sign me up for one of those $80,000 5-bedroom homes. That the older
Clyde, that's exactly what they were falling back onto. They're like, oh my God, you have no idea how hard we had it. We had to live through 13% interest rates. I'm like, ooh, 13% interest rate on your $20,000 house. God help you. Like,
Actually, I saw that as a tweet.
Folks, different times.
I saw that as a
times.
tweet. Somebody who watched the Amityville Horror, the old movie, and they said, you know, it used to be terrifying until they realized the house was only 80 grand. Sign me up. I'll just tell those supernatural beings just to keep it down at night. I'll make do. You know? It really, awful.
Yeah.
What, you know, this is the reality though that people are having to deal with. You put out a tweet actually last week. I wish I had it to reference, but you're talking about the brain drain and your son, your own flesh and blood, who's holding out, coming out of an engineering degree, saying, "Forget it. I'm gonna wait it out and see if an American firm won't snatch him up."
Yeah, no, that's exactly correct. He had some offers from Canadian firms and he turned them down. And he's trying to get into the US. He's applied at SpaceX. Man, can you imagine how proud I'll be if he gets a job at SpaceX?
That'd be fantastic.
I don't think he can. Yeah, it'd be fantastic, but I think that, you know, Elon only hires guys with masters and PhDs. And but yeah, he's applying it, you know, because I told him he made the decision on his own. You know, he's a young adult who knows what's going on, and it didn't take him long to realize that that he's not going to get ahead here. He knows what I had, and he talks to me, and he's realized that he's not going to get ahead like we did. You know, a good paying job in Canada doesn't guarantee that you'll own a house. A house is out of reach for him. He wants to be an owner of a house, and he knows, you know, he's done the math. He knows that that's out of reach. He's driving a used car. The companies are offering him. There's no loyalty from companies to employees and stuff like that. So yeah. Speaking of Elon,
but Marty, I was just going to say, there is something to look forward to. You know, if the NDP ever gets back into Alberta, you may have you may have a premier that could bring all kinds of things to the province. Here's a prospect for the next premier, talking about what she might do if she gets in as the premier of Alberta.
This morning I announced the most aggressive plan to respond to climate change in the history of our province. My plan takes dramatic action to address the three biggest drivers of carbon emissions in Alberta: oil and gas, the electricity grid, and transportation. I know that some folks are going to say that it goes too far, and the members opposite think that we should do nothing for another 3 years. But when I see Alberta facing catastrophic drought, unprecedented wildfires, and air that isn't safe for our kids to breathe on a summer's day, I know it's time to take dramatic action. The time for creative accounting and fun with numbers and aspirational goals, it's over. We must reduce carbon emissions that drive climate change and threaten our way of life. As Premier, I will take back control of carbon policy by implementing a Made in Alberta cap and trade system.
Premier.
We will redirect the revenue away from industry subsidies and the UCP.
Marty, she's making promises that are going to turn us all around. It's going to turn the whole place around, and everything's going to be great, and the economy is going to function.
Dude, I'm in tears, man. That's too funny. As Premier, like, God. Oh, now she sounds like Jagmeet Singh when I'm Premier. I just heard that now. I just listened to it quickly. I mean, it's rehashed policies. First of all, I didn't hear anything new, right? Like,
no.
and then blaming the same old thing. Like how hyperbolic, right? Like, if our children can't breathe the air, honey, like, look at her. Like, the least of her worries is breathing clean air. She's gonna die of a stroke long before that.
I'm sure there's clean air, like right by the deep fryer at McDonald's. I'm sure
this is one of those other things. Yeah, like, yeah. Sorry, and everybody always says this especially when it comes to Sarah Hoffman. I've been cruel to her, and people say body shaming. I'm like, I have no problem body shaming her. I have no problem mocking her, because she mocked us when she was deputy premier of this province and when she was health minister. It was a mockery, and so I can't take her seriously. And if anybody's offended that I'm making fun of her, so be it. I mean,
well, that's a really good point actually that you bring up, because she was shaming people that didn't make a certain medical decision, and well, I think eating habits and all of that would be a medical decision, healthy habits such as I don't know, eating a salad once in a while. You know, these are things that yeah, I mean, you can't be a hypocrite. Let's not be
No,
hypocritical on this one.
no, and you know, I want my health minister to be a little bit healthier and lead by example, and perhaps be a doctor. I want my attorney general to perhaps be a lawyer, and I want my minister of fisheries and oceans to have a background, you know, come from the Maritimes. It's not too much to ask, you know, it's not too much. So, boy, yeah.
Sorry, I thought I might catch you off guard with that one. Where are you going?
Yeah, you can see how mad I was getting. Bring the humor back. Bring the humor back. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, yeah. Oh God. Actually, there was a. Actually, let's be serious for a second. There was so the NDP in Alberta are running a campaign. We have some interesting candidates. I saw a really cool poll the other day where somebody was doing some analysis of what the next election might look like depending on which NDP leader they choose. And if they choose her, that would the polls predict that would do the most harm to the NDP. So I'm supporting her. So if I had to vote in the NDP campaign for their leaders, I'm voting for her because apparently she would be a disaster for the NDP party.
So that's Marty's endorsement. There's Sarah Hoffman.
Yeah, Marty endorses Sarah Hoffman 100%. Go Sarah, go.
Fair enough. And then there's also, well, we all know the other NDP leader. That would be Justin Trudeau himself. I mean, ostensibly, this is a great graphic. It's the "I'm equivocally opposed to any sort of coalition." That's the quote from Justin Trudeau himself. While Jagmeet Singh is holding him up as a majority in the government right now, and that might be coming to an end. Do you think that's going to come to an end? Let's just get into it.
First of all, I want to say I'm kind of amazed that he hasn't scrubbed his whole Twitter platform, right? I mean, Trudeau's got some doozy quotes from in the past. Like my favorite Trudeau quote from in the past was the one where it's like, you know, it's hard not to be disappointed in your government when there's a scandal every other day. It's like, really? Like he said that, right?
He did say that.
Yeah, and stuff like this. What was your question? Do I think?
Okay, so let's move into
clue
it.
in for the viewers what's going on, right? Tell them what's happening. Actually, it'll happen when they're watching this tomorrow.
Right.
Today.
So I'm not going to play the whole clip, but Pierre Poilievre, he made an announcement that he's making this ultimatum. This is happening. They're putting forward a motion for no confidence based on the carbon tax, and the carbon tax that's supposed to be going up by 23% automatically April 1st. What an amazing April 1st joke. And of course, as we all know, they're going to be getting raises on April 1st too. Yeah. Trudeau himself is going to get an extra $16,000 come April 1st. Can you believe that?
He does, and then the governor general gets a big fat raise.
Oh, they all get big fat raises. The minimum of the raises between the MPs is going to be $8,000. That's the backbencher.
And their raises, along with a lot of civil service, are indexed to inflation. So they don't give a shit if inflation's out of control. And we'll talk about that today, because you know, 10% inflation, 10% raise, right? So back to your original question. Yeah, that's it's a cool strategy of the Conservatives to make, and the timing is good. You know, the Conservatives are realizing that there's a lot of dissent let me backtrack. So the Conservatives are making this a non-confidence motion. As it stands, the Liberals and the NDP are still fully aligned. Jagmeet has said he will still respect the alliance. So we have no reason to suspect that the motion would pass. So, you know, it's a Conservative motion saying cancel the carbon tax increase. The Liberals in the NDP are going to vote against that motion. But I mean, there's a slim hope, because look at the events that occurred this week. There were 3 Liberals that voted against the party lines on Monday on an NDP motion to, it was complicated, convoluted, like asking Canada to stop sending weapons to Israel. I mean, we don't even send weapons to Israel as it stands. We haven't sent any in 20 years.
We don't have any send. That's it.
No, we have nothing to send. You know, what can we send? A couple of small arms that we manufacture out of Winnipeg, and maybe some light armored carriers that we make out of Montreal. But I think the order is so big going to Saudi Arabia that there's nothing left to send to Israel. So, yeah. But anyways, three. Do you have one of those clips? I mean, that was impressive. There was 3 Liberal MPs who voted against party lines, who kind of voted with their conscience, and we don't see that very often. And back to the original question, I guarantee there's a lot of NDP and Liberal MPs getting a lot of pressure from their constituents saying, we don't need this tax right now. We don't need this increase. So are they going to vote with their constituents, or are they going to vote the party line? My bet is they're going to vote the party line.
So I have this clip. It's from Anthony Housefather, and this was his clip where he was standing in opposition to the bill, which was a bill. It was a bill that had like it's non-binding bills. Like
it's just a motion. There's nothing binding about it. It's just a simple motion.
Right. It's a virtue signal, if anything. It's just a virtue signal to say these things. But his thing was, he's Jewish. Claims to be he's a Zionist. He condemns. Let him say it in his own words.
Mr. Speaker, I am a Canadian, I am a Jew, and I am a Zionist. I am proud to have been born in this country. I am proud that my family came here in the 19th century and helped build this country. My family members fought in the World War I and World War II. We are part of Canada and lucky to be so. I've represented Canada in swimming internationally. I've represented Canada as a parliamentarian. And there's no place in the world I want to be other than in Canada. The Jewish community, of which I am part, is a religious community that has existed for thousands of years, but we're also a people. And we, since we've been here in 1760, have helped build this country. We got enormous opportunities, more than we've received anywhere else in history. But we've also, in academia, in law, in medicine, in physics, in science, in sports, in journalism, we have helped build this country. And 95% of Canadian Jews are Zionists. Zionism means we believe that we have a right to have one Jewish state in our ancestral homeland. Jews are indigenous to Israel. And we have had a history where Jews have faced persecution in every country in the world. We were expelled from England in 1290. We were expelled from Spain and Portugal in the 1490s. We faced the Crusades where people were killed. We were put in ghettos throughout Europe. We faced the Holocaust. Jews were expelled from Arab lands in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And we needed one place where every Jew in the world knew if things went wrong in their country that they could go. And that is Israel, and that's what Zionism means. So when I get horrible, horrible threats and emails saying I'm a dirty Zionist instead of a dirty Jew, that's what Zionism means. So at all these demonstrations around the country, outside of synagogues, and outside of Jewish schools, and outside of Jewish community centers, where people are screaming about how horrible Zionists are, well, I am a Zionist, and I'm not embarrassed or ashamed of being a Zionist.
We got to give the guy credit for having, the gumption to just stick to his guns. Like, this is his opinion.
No, absolutely. And so obviously here's a man who, 2 things are happening for him. He's voting with his conscience because he's a Zionist. So he's voting with his conscience. Mm-hmm. But also he's voting with the conscience of, he's representing his constituents, because I know he lives in Mount Royal in Montreal in an extremely high Jewish concentrated neighborhood. So he's responding to the needs of his constituents, which is what he should be doing. And
that's actually his duty. And this is what a lot of politicians don't do. Right. They just placate to the polls.
Right. So tomorrow on the tomorrow on the non-confidence vote, how many politicians there will have received hundreds of emails from their constituents saying, we don't want this carbon tax increase, but we'll still vote for it? I guarantee it, the majority. So that's yes, he was an example, but trust me, he won't do that very often, because he's already said even tomorrow he's voting party lines again, because he's going to get. He will. He said. And he's voting with the party line tomorrow. He's not talking about crossing the floor. He's going right back to voting with party lines. he's a liberal. The pressures to vote with the party, whether it's conservative, NDP, or liberal, are powerful because, if he got away in this one with voting against the motion because they knew it wasn't binding and so forth, but I'm sure he got a slap on the wrist. And the slap on the wrist for these guys comes in the form of he'll be relegated to the backbench. He won't be allowed to ask questions. He won't get support. If he's campaigning, others won't come help him campaign. If there's a nice boondoggle somewhere, he won't get invited. So if you vote against the party line, man, you get pushed out real quick. So it's a shame. It's a shame.
That's
because
that's not good. That's how the system works.
No. And Anthony Housefather, like, I know he's an Anglophone in Montreal who petitioned before being an MP. He was always a pro Anglophone rights. He's a very passionate man, and he's almost honorable. I mean, to be really honorable, you have to go to the end and then make the final gesture.
Well, there was that one clip that, like, a bit of naivety that he has, right? Where he almost gets there to the reality of the situation, and well, here's the clip. This is the clip of him talking about, I'll preface this. Remember when Liberal MP Anthony Housefather admitted that the vax did not go through the proper testing, and yet they all still said it was safe, effective, and mandated it. And here's the clip of him saying this.
These agreements require employees of the Government of Canada that access these documents to sign confidentiality agreements. And why is that? Why is there much more redactions, as my colleague said, in these documents than in other documents? It's because these documents were signed at the beginning of the pandemic, when everybody was desperate for vaccines, when companies were being told to rush vaccine production, do testing in an unprecedented way, in a way they normally don't do it. So these companies were exposed to way higher liability, putting their products on the market than they normally would, because they didn't do the type of testing that normally takes these drugs years to come to market. They did it all in less than a year. So he
had questions about this at the time, but then he ended up going and then just voting with the party.
He's accidentally telling the truth. I mean, it's like he forgot that the camera's on. He's at committee, and somebody said, I remember that instance very well, and I have a copy of that video. I played it so many times. He was asked why the contracts with Pfizer and Moderna and all of them were so redacted, because we wanted to see the contract. And he basically said they're redacted because we didn't do due diligence. We did this under duress. We were in a panic. Anyways, that's beside the point. He's accidentally telling the truth. But yes, subsequently after that, he's like, he backtracked on that quickly. And the vaccines are all safe and blah 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 blah. So
there's this whole contention with the vote that happened just recently. Because I did a video talking about him and his concern for the Jewish community. I received a lot of comments, and a lot of comments saying, a lot of people, and one comment in particular was a Zionist, who his name in the thing was Zionist, and he said, it was a real shame that the Jewish community never came out in support of people that were being persecuted under the COVID rules. And when people were comparing that to the start of Germany 1933, they were lambasted for it. And then now look what's happening. Now look what's happening to Jewish people around the country, being lambasted in their own communities and whatnot from all these big protests. It's unbelievable that this is what's happening. But imagine,
I have a hard time not siding with the Jews. I mean, I am so sympathetic to their plea. Like, God, they've had a bum rap, man, for like 100 years.
No, I get it. I absolutely get it. Yeah. And of course, tired propaganda pieces like the articles of the Elders of Zion, which has been completely debunked as a crappy piece of fiction that was actually written like 30 years before it was first came out. Like, yeah, this stuff keeps cycling around and people drum up hatred for these people. But the main point of that this commenter was making was, it would have done them a lot of service if they had come to the aid of the unvaccinated during that time. But instead, we were met with things like honk honk isn't an acronym for, you know what I mean? Like this is the kind of thing that happens. What I am saying though to people is extend that olive branch. I know they didn't behave in the way that you would have appreciated it, but maybe after the fact, ipso facto, we can extend an olive branch and say, we know what you feel like. We know what you're feeling, and that sucks.
Yeah, I mean, think of all the different persecuted groups, and once in a while they come close to getting alliances, and then all of a sudden something divides even the groups that have been persecuted. You know, like the whole trans movement, Save the Children was an example of that, right? I mean, it was wonderful to see people who supported children come together, and then all of a sudden you got this war in Israel and Hamas, and now we got people that a week ago were allies are now enemies. That was another disgusting, not off topic, but that was another disgusting thing last week. That MP from that Montreal MP who met, and Melanie Joly, the minister, who met with the leader of Hamas, holding hands together and hugging tightly. God, that was like, geez, that's creepy. That's creepy. Anyways, let's get back to the vote of non-confidence, because there's more to that story, and it's ridiculous. So Pierre Poilievre comes out. This is the thing. He says, we're going to do this. A brilliant tactic, I think, on his part. It's getting the ball rolling. We don't want to go to 2025. It's not that they're going to vote for it, but it's kind of forcing their hand. And I'll get into that after, but I wanted to show this clip because I wanted to hear what the news media was saying about it. You know, all the punditry and all that other stuff. Yeah.
Well, this is what came out of it immediately. They can't help themselves. I swear they just can't.
I want to add one more thing though, Marcy, because this isn't bad unexpected. This is kind of in keeping with the tactics that we've seen from Pierre Poilievre. But if you saw his speech, which we were televising a few minutes ago, I would just say that it represents a real shift in rhetoric, a real intensification in rhetoric from Pierre Poilievre. He literally described Canada today as, quote unquote, a hell we could not have imagined 8 years ago. He chided the national media for, underestimating how bad it would get here in Canada, for suggesting that their warnings as an opposition party about how bleak things would become under Trudeau were being dismissed, and that now he's been proven correct. This is a Trump-style brand of rhetoric. This is the American carnage speech that we saw from Trump when he took his inaugural address. And conservatives hate that comparison. They loathe that comparison. They
hate it. Why do we hate it?
But when you're going to use that kind of burned field, burned ground.
Oh, yeah, I got it.
I'm laughing with you. I don't even listen to these guys anymore, and I actually think they're hurting themselves at this point. You know what I mean? Like, people are seeing right through this.
Is this the new Godwin's law, though? Is this the new Godwin's law? Is the law that a debate is lost?
Whoever mentions Nazi first loses the argument. Yes. Is that Godwin's? Yeah. So Trump is the new Godwin's law. We need to come up with a.
If you invoke Trump, you've lost the debate.
Clyde's law. If you invoke Trump, you've immediately, or Harper, I guess, either or, right? I mean, like it's
it kills me. It cracks me up every time.
Like what is Trump style? Oh my god.
What is the Trump style? Successful?
Transparent,
rallying,
comical a little bit, sure.
Vindicated after the fact, after accusations have been made towards him. I mean, what are these things that are Trump style?
No, I mean, these guys keep pushing a narrative, and the narrative is collapsing. I mean,
but it's tired, right? It's so. It's deflated at this point. It's become a parody of itself, and this is why we're laughing so hard. Like when you pop that up, and you're like, wow, okay. So he's made a brilliant move. Anyway, let's get into the brilliant move that I think he's made. What he's done is he's really put the spot on Jagmeet Singh in this scenario. He knows Trudeau's not going to back down. He knows that his MPs want to. There's a lot of them, like some that have come out in the Maritimes that are encouraging Trudeau to back down on this one, open letters and whatnot. Now, what the pressure that's coming down on,
and he's going to put pressure on a lot of individual MPs, right? I mean, I guarantee, like I'll be picking out every single MP who votes in favor of this carbon tax and making sure that that we highlight to their constituents that your MP just approved a 23% increase to the carbon tax in a time when inflation is still 2.8%. And the Bank of Canada clearly said, Tiff Macklin said it clearly, the carbon tax adds 60 basis point to inflation. So it's 0.6. So instead of 2.9, which the Liberals are bragging, if we didn't have the carbon tax, Tiff Macklin says inflation would be 2.3, which is within the range that he's targeting, which means that he could then lower interest rates. It all ties together. So carbon tax is going to contribute to inflation, and I can't believe people still say, "How does it?" I'm like, that's a totally, yeah. Well, I mean, that was another thing that came out this week: inflation.
Like I want to get into that. This is actually a good one to get into. This was your tweet. The weighing of the 8 major items in the Consumer Price Index basket of goods has not been revised since 2022. Does that look right to you? Now, I looked at it and I went over it and I said, I tweeted back to you. What I see is a basket of goods where the percentage of each item is in constant flux. That's what's happening.
They don't want you to be able to do year over year comparisons. They like to muddle it up all the time. Muddle it up, right? I mean, change the weighing. Rent is like, why would some of the changes be so significant? Like, do we, actually rent was the one I was picking on. So, they're saying, well, actually, there was another graph. I don't know if you have it. That's the one. Okay. So look at every bar, right? So the basket of goods for that's used to measure the Consumer Price Index is these 8 big categories: food, shelter, consumer stuff like that, blah, blah. And 8 or 6 of the categories are like almost at the 5% inflation. And 2 categories are down in the negative 2%. So prices went down in 2 categories, but up 5%. And the Bank of Canada says, oh yeah, so the average inflation is 2.8%. Bullshit. It's closer to 5. And then the only reason they get away with it is by giving a high weighting to categories that don't matter. Like they're playing games.
This is the part that got me the most. So you can go look at this if you want on your own time as well. I'll leave the link in the description down below.
Do it for you folks. Don't.
but no. So the importance of updating the basket of weights. And they get into this weight reference period, the composition of CPI basket. Now, TLDR, if you want the TLDR for it, this is how it works. They look at the inflation and then they say, hey, wait a second, people have been buying less of that item and they've been buying more of these other items. So let's switch it. Let's turn it around and put their percentages in different places so that it reflects more what people are buying. But the problem is people are buying less of the item because they're priced out of buying those items. They've become too expensive, so people are foregoing this stuff. It's crazy.
Absolutely. And you point this out all the time brilliantly, right? Inflation is just a government thing. Government creates inflation. All the CPI does is...
It's a monetary phenomena.
It's a way to measure what they call inflation. And they're trying to convince us that inflation is under control when it's absolutely not. You're right. I mean, people aren't traveling anymore because they can't afford to travel. Well, let's lower that category. Oh, how convenient. You inflation the shit out of it, and now you remove it from the basket because we can't afford it anymore. And now you go, so on this day, inflation is 10% because you're including travel. Then tomorrow you remove travel from the basket and you go, oh, look, inflation is only 2%. Yeah, we know your games. We know, and Canadians are smart. I mean, when I ask Canadians what they think inflation is, they all know that it's way more than 2.8%.
Well, see, I want to get these numbers because they go even deeper. Now, when you look at the different categories, I'll scroll down again so you can see all the different categories that they have in here, way down at the bottom. So you'll have groups like food, and some of it's broken up to food purchased from stores, food purchased from restaurants. But they don't say what foods. They don't include that, and they do this on purpose. You got to dig further if you want to find out what.
You got to dig further, and you will find the foods. But look at that. That's a good example. Look at food purchased from from stores, right? Like it's, oh no, that's not the inflation. That's just the weight of the basket.
That's just the weight in the basket. So obviously they're fluctuating it because people are buying less food. So it's like, well, let's put less weight to that because people want less of it. Now this
and if you compare it, like if it's 10%, and I can barely see it, but for instance, if furniture is 2.5%, that means, by that interpretation, that would mean that a Canadian spends only about 4 times as much on food as they do on furniture, which is bullshit. We spend way more on food, and furniture could be almost nothing because we've stopped buying furniture during COVID.
That's right.
This whole thing, no, we're definitely on the same page.
It's a massive flubbing of the numbers, and it basically what it can do, and again, I'll leave a link in the description so people can go follow the thread. Nya Pfannerstill, she made a great tweet thread on this.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce her name. She's really good. Yeah, I follow her.
She basically sums it up in this tweet thread, showing that the way they're able to do this is they're able to flub the numbers right to the point where, if your rent goes up by $500, because of the weights, it'll only show up or register as a $33.50 increase. And it's just like, yeah, you can say this stuff all day long, but people will wise up to it because at the end of the day, they have to spend more money on basic necessities. And what's going up in this inflationary environment is basic necessities. So you're not going to be getting a lot of these, other things. You're going to be buying a lot less of it. I was laughing because, travel went way down and stays at hotels went way down. It's like, well, yeah. What do you?
Yeah, because when you have a limited budget and you get hit by additional expenses, what do you cut first, right? You cut back your clothing, you cut back your travel, it's all predictable. So supply and demand will correct faster on those categories. And the last category, people can't adjust people will hang on to their car forever and they'll hang on to their house. So there's no elasticity.
Even when it comes to food, they'll be buying less steak. They'll still spend money on food, but you'll have less steak, you'll have more ground beef. That's just the way it is.
By most definition, my family's well off. I can't tell you the last time we had a steak, Clyde. Maybe when you came here. We never eat steak anymore. It's pork and it's chicken, if we're lucky. I think I had bassa today. What kind of fish is bassa? Is that carp that's been relabeled?
Maybe. Well, we're not eating bass fish. Bassa. Okay, that's
no. You know how they tilapia and bassa and some of these, like, they rename fish that I think they're garbage fish. I'm pretty sure I must have been like Asian carp or something like that, and they rename it so that I had these $5.99 bassa fillets.
Fair enough. Just season them enough. You'll be just fine. Just
butter, and then my secret recipe is I take potato chips and I crumple them on there as my batter.
Well, nonetheless, it's inflation, and this is the thing. They keep celebrating these numbers, and there's nothing to celebrate here. There really is nothing to celebrate. It's flub the numbers, make us all feel good for a minute, but at the end of the day, we still got to go to the grocery store.
And actually, so back to the vote. Tomorrow is a non-confidence vote, but there's another one coming up on April 16th. So April 16th is Budget 2024. So I'm absolutely looking forward to Budget 2024 for the federal budget. And, the federal budget is tabled on April 16th. There'll be a vote, a week later. The federal budget, when it's tabled, has to be approved. That is an automatic confidence vote. So there's 2 coming up in the next, say, 6 weeks. So tomorrow's important, and I think Pierre probably knows about that. And whatever the outcome of this vote is, like I said, there'll be a mass mailing. We'll hit on all the different constituents who got screwed by their MPs, and then we'll double down. Can the Liberals be defeated in between those 2 budgets? We'll see. Interesting news in Europe today. The Prime Minister of Ireland resigned out of the blue. He played the woke game and thought he was, same thing. He was one of those young champions put in by Klaus, and he pushed his country too far with the woke agenda. They just had a referendum, and he lost the referendum big time. So he did the right thing and he resigned. I mean, I don't think Trudeau's that kind of man. Trudeau could lose referendum after referendum after referendum, and he won't resign.
Won't do the right thing, that guy. No.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I mean, but if the Trudeau Liberals survive the next 2 confidence vote, then yeah, there won't be an election this summer. Then we'd have to wait until something to happen in September or October.
So I would argue that the longer that Trudeau hangs on, the better the Conservatives are going to perform. They're going to do so much better if the election actually goes to June 2025. I don't want it to go that long, of course, for obvious reasons. But if the Conservatives wanted to play it, I mean, obviously they want to get into power, but if they would get the most amount of seats, if they let, especially with what's going on with Jagmeet Singh, if Jagmeet Singh keeps propping them up, they just keep losing support. And poll after poll, Nanos just had another poll where the NDP are taking another nosedive since the last one, and it's now a trend. It's now become a trend where it was trending upwards. It was trending upwards for a while as Liberal voters were saying, nah, forget it, I'm done with the Liberals.
Yeah, I mean, the NDP this week looked like clowns in the House of Commons with their scarves voting when they proposed that motion,
That's an egregious kind of, if you're a representative in Canada, what are you doing wearing another nation's flag or whatever?
You're not even allowed to props in the House of Commons. Like some people get criticized. Like one MP years ago got criticized for having "I love Alberta oil" button, and he had to take it off. But somebody else can show up with
a baby.
Speaking of
a baby,
yeah. Hey, you want to go funny? Do you have the clip of the guy who showed up? Speaking of buttons and stunts and costume, do you have the clip of the guy who showed up at committee wearing his medals at the ArriveCAN committee wearing his medals?
I do have the clip. This is
maybe we want to save that one. That's almost no.
We'll get right into it.
Yeah. Let's go light. Let's lighten it up a bit. Yeah.
So they'll set the stage for this. So this is during the ArriveCAN investigation, and turns out an actual government employee was
David Yeo.
Yeah, he was dipping into these contracts, and he had a company, Dalian, and he was awarded a $91 million contract, or maybe not 91 in just the ArriveCAN, but he's done $91 million worth of contracts with this, and of course he shows up to Parliament, and he's got all of his medals on there. Yeah, Larry Brock is a rock star. Yeah, do you want me to show the whole clip here?
That's your call. Show a little bit of it. I mean, just him answering some of the questions. It's ridiculous how poorly they answer. This could take down Trudeau. Pause for a second.
Yeah.
I'm surprised this hasn't taken down Trudeau. Like I said, the ad scam scandal that took down the Chrétien Liberals was like a $22 million scandal. This is like on steroids. This is 10 times that amount. And
it's going to blow up.
Floating. Yeah, like constituents should be mad. Like, and this guy with his medals, he goes on, like, listen to him. You're like, oh, well, everybody in government has a side job. Like literally. Yeah, play the clip.
Despite being asked several questions about the nature of your employment, you focused squarely on your directorship and your shares within Dalian, and you said absolutely nothing about the fact that you were a public servant. So it begs the question, why would you withhold that information from Canadians?
Yeah. Appreciate the question. So this needs to be analyzed a little bit more. And it was September 19th that I joined the public service. It was 42 days later that the meeting, came to us, and we were invited as Dalian. I was invited to come to and speak at OGO as Dalian. The understanding is that Dalian holds a top secret facility clearance. And those that know what a top secret facility clearance is knows. And I hold a higher, and did hold a higher than top secret security clearance for Dalian. As well, in my short time of 42 days with the department, I also have a top secret clearance there and a secret clearance. So, by nature of that aspect, and the fact that this had zero to do with D&D, it had zero to do with what I do during the day as a high assurance specialist for the department, It has zero to do with my employment there.
Yeah, it's got all kinds to do with conflict of interest.
It's conflict of interest. Yeah, like, oh yeah, it's okay that I work for the government, but I work in a different department. I'm a senior ranking person with top security clearance. Look at my medals. Ooh, I got all my medals. I got my flag of the Royal Regiment on the background. I got a picture of somebody in Afghanistan. So I'm trustworthy. Like, that's why we have
not
these
at all.
rules.
Not
like,
at all.
Yeah. Like, and oh my God, he's so casual about it. Like, it's the alarm bells for every Canadian should be going off. And I get frustrated because I still hear people, even in my own circle, go, yeah, there's inefficiencies in government. I'm like, I'm okay with inefficiencies in government. I'm okay with that. It's a big, actually, I'm not entirely okay. I mean, I'd like to reduce the inefficiencies. This is an inefficiency.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is fraud.
It's fraud. It's straight up fraud.
Yeah.
But what this is really pointing out is the fact that it's not just happening in the ArriveCAN scenario. It's happening across the board. And this is
the tip of the iceberg.
This opens it up to like, okay, well, if we're spending billions, tens of billions of dollars every year, what kind of fraud is happening with that money? And where is it going? Who's skimming off the top, making 20% here, 30% there to do nothing, to get no work done? This is ridiculous. And I love this.
Yeah, I mean, like again, I always bring it back to the private sector. Like, there's no way I tolerate some of this stuff. Like, in very rare circumstances, somebody could declare something to me that could almost be a conflict of interest, and then I'd allow it. For instance, I wouldn't allow an employee's wife. If an employee works for me and he's like, hey, my wife is going to take the contract to do the catering for us, I'd be like, sorry, Larry, she can't do that. Like, your wife can't do the catering for us, right? Unless it was in a very small community and I needed once in a while, and he declared it, I go, okay, hey, Larry, I heard your wife does catering. I'll bid the job and it'll come through me. But your wife just coming in and doing catering for us at somewhere else, or my brother Larry or my brother John drives a vacuum truck or an oil truck or whatever. No, man, like it's all declared and it's all no. Like, it's conflict of interest. If you want to, if making money delivering oil for me is that lucrative, knock yourself out, go run that business and quit your job as a foreman for me, period. End of discussion. And by the way, there's no guarantee like that. You probably won't get the job because you're an insider. And I got an audit department that's going to say, no, too bad. Larry, after he quits working for me, has to wait 2 years before he can accept a contract. I go, fair enough. In the government, no. Fuck. In the government, it's not wait 6 months. It's do it while. Yeah, these guys are running contracts on the side for another department while they're hired by us. It's insane. Completely insane.
Yeah, it is insane. It really is.
Get
absolutely
upset, folks. Like, write a letter to your MP. Holy smokes.
So I've got this other clip that came up recently, and this one just the title of the video is "I'm not often left speechless," but I'll skip to the point where he's asking the question. And
actually these guys were all on Northern Perspective last week, right? That was a great show,
right? So and this clip, so it's Garnett. Asking, I can't remember the other guy's name, Frith's partner at the GC Strategies, asking him about Frith and what he thinks about him.
And believing everything he tells you, regardless of what this investigation reveals.
I've known Christian Firth since 2007. We've been a business partner since 2015. He's honest, trustworthy, hardworking man and a parent. I have no doubt that he's done nothing wrong. I'm confident all independent investigation will establish that.
Were you reading what you just said, sir?
You're reading that?
Speaking from the heart. Speaking from the heart.
Sir, I don't even know what to say. This is so ridiculous, sir. Like, is it not obviously ridiculous to you? You've come before this committee. You've been summoned here. You would have been arrested by the Sergeant at Arms if you hadn't shown up. And you're telling us you did 2 hours of prep. You didn't read the Auditor General's report, and you're committed to standing by everything Mr. Firth tells you, even though you had allegedly no involvement in the events that could lead to criminal charges.
That's crazy, is it not?
That's insane. Yeah.
Is this what is happening?
Is this what's happening? He's just dumbfounded by this. This is how loosey-goosey our governments become, where they don't even think they're going to get in trouble for this. Like, oh, yeah, we embezzled, $30 million. Isn't that just the norm? Like, whatever, I'll read off the script here, not even worry about my testimony, where they could be criminally charged.
We talked about a senator last week who quit and moved to Finland. We got these guys. I mean, they got bank accounts all over. We got Trudeau's never been held accountable. It starts at the top. So if Trudeau's not accountable, then the chief of the RCMP says, screw that, I'm not going down for this guy. Then the guy underneath says, I'm not going down, and I'm not going down. And that's the state of Canadian institutions in 2024. It's a really sad state. It's a sad state.
How do we bring it back? How do we bring that back?
Well, you and I are doing our best. We do these shows. We write letters. We expose the truth. That's the strongest thing we can do, right? I mean, it's as long as about 3 or 4% of us keep talking about the truth and exposing this stuff, then people start listening inevitably. I mean, I see it. I sense a tide turning. We see it in the polls. I sense a tide turning. Fingers crossed that Poilievre is true to his word and will do the right thing. I mean, I've seen it here in Alberta with Danielle. I worry some days because it's a political machine. They got to stay in power. It is what it is. Hey, can we finish on a funny one? Did you see? Did you queue up the vandalism? The two ladies vandalizing the Gondek petition.
Yeah, I've got it here. So I'll let this one play. Describe what's happening here.
So Gondek is being recalled. Somebody put a recalled Gondek sign somewhere. It's similar to an election sign. It's legal. It's covered under law. And these two ladies are vandalizing the sign and being questioned about it. And they're quite bold. They're quite brazen. They don't seem to care. But they put it up all.
You should be thrown in jail for this. Really? Yes. Where are you ladies?
Like, oh no! Like as if nothing would happen to them.
So then people started searching on social media, and they were both found proudly showing off their artwork on their Facebook pages. And they rewrote the word respect, so they're using vandalism as an example and saying you should show their message is you should show respect for politicians. I'm like, wow, that's a great message there. So you're teaching us a lesson about respect by vandalizing somebody else's property.
Yeah, good job, old ladies.
Yeah, good job. So and back to accountability, the pictures, the film, everything's been sent to the Calgary police. Will anything come of it? Absolutely not. I mean, at the very least, they should get a slap on the wrist and a $500 fine or something. But again, we had politicians here. We had politicians, a federal politician during the election. He got caught picking up signs of his opponents and throwing them in the garbage, and it's all on video. And he's an elected MP. He got elected. He didn't get thrown out of caucus. He might have gotten a $200 fine, and that's it.
How do people become so emboldened that they think that they can do this stuff?
I didn't get a fine, Clyde, but remember last year or two during the election, I took a picture of my ballot. Remember that story?
Yeah.
I took a picture of my ballot, and I got a letter from Elections Canada threatening the shit out of me for breaking the law by taking a picture of my ballot. I'm like, wow. Like, again, they'll come after me. They'll come after a guy who runs over a pylon at Coots. They'll come after all of us.
Unless you happen to have ticked for the Liberals or the NDP on that ballot, maybe you wouldn't have gotten a call.
Then I wouldn't have got called. But yeah, I ticked for my Conservative MP, and that was disturbing because I was like, wow, like sure, the pictures on Facebook, or on Twitter, but they had to do some digging to get all sorts of information to be able to send me that address or that letter. Anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, scary.
Yeah.
1984.
You and I can't get on the wrong side of the law. You and I cannot get on the wrong side of the law. They'll come down on us hard. But
well, that's why you got to kind of keep your nose clean. You got to do things the right way. Even on YouTube, I don't swear. I only allow Marty to swear on my channel. And I
apologize.
No, it's a joke. It's fine. It's fine for the few odd and end ones. But no, this is about keeping your nose clean. It's about doing things the right way. So they got nothing on you. If they got nothing on you, then what do, right? And there's plenty on a lot of these characters. I mean, vandalizing signs? What is that? Anyway, Marty, where can people find you online?
Shivering at home right now. We're getting a snowstorm. No, online, Marty Up North on Twitter and Marty Up North on YouTube. Yeah, come see me on Twitter. Give me a comment on Twitter. I'm a shit disturber. Love to interact with everybody. Had a good storm today, man. Don't pick on boomers.
You'll get it for sure.
Don't call boomers privileged. They don't like that.
Oh, they don't like the truth. All right, we'll see you all next week.
Yeah, have fun in Japan, man.
Will do.